Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're exploring a seriously fascinating question. What exactly is the psychological mental toolkit required to achieve our biggest, most ambitious long-term goals? It's a topic psychologists have been debating for decades. Is it just pure talent? Is it a lucky break? Or is there actually a specific developable set of traits that allows some people to just completely thrive, no matter the odds? Well, let's dive right into this and unpack the exact mindsets and behaviors that really pave the way for extraordinary achievement. Here's a quick roadmap of what we're going to cover today. We've got the psychology of success, resilience, grit, the power of self-efficacy, and finally, fixed versus growth mindsets. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the psychology of success. Now, for a really long time, conventional wisdom basically told us that raw innate intelligence was the ultimate dictator of our achievements. But modern psychology challenges that assumption entirely. Seriously, why do some individuals accomplish so much more than others who are equally intelligent? That's the fundamental mystery early researchers were absolutely desperate to solve. Look, if success was just a simple math equation based on IQ, then everyone with a genius-level IQ would be wildly successful. But we all know from real life that this just isn't true, right? So what's the missing piece of the puzzle? Well, that missing ingredient, as famously defined by psychologist Angela Duckworth, is grit. Grit is a non-cognitive trait, meaning it's not about raw brain power. It's defined as the perseverance of effort combined with passion for a particular long-term goal. To really put this into perspective, let's talk about a young boy named Shashank. Shashank lived in a small village, he loved learning, and he had these absolutely massive dreams. Now, the villagers, they constantly mocked him. They told him that dreaming big was easy, but actually achieving those dreams was basically impossible for someone from their background. But Shashank, he was absolutely full of grit. He didn't just sit around dreaming, he maintained an intense passion for his goals and put in the hard work every single day, completely tuning out all that negative noise. He had the pure stamina to stay the course. And his story brilliantly illustrates exactly what the data shows us. Sure, intelligence is a great predictor, but it's not the whole story. In fact, it gets crazier. Studies actually show that grit is often completely unrelated to or sometimes even slightly inversely correlated with intelligence. No way, right? But it's true. It means that non-cognitive traits, things like hardiness, ambition, tenacity, and the ability to just put your head down and grind like Shashank did, those are the real drivers that keep you moving forward when sheer intellect just isn't enough to get you across the finish line. Moving right along to Section 2, resilience, bouncing back. Okay, so we've talked about the stamina needed for the long haul, but what about the immediate, heavy blows that life inevitably throws at us? That is where psychological resilience comes in. It's your ability to cope mentally and emotionally with a sudden crisis and bounce back quickly. Think of it this way. If grit is the engine keeping you moving forward over the years, resilience is the shock absorber that protects you when you hit a massive pothole. It's all about positive adaptation. Think back to Shawshank for a second. He faced constant failures and setbacks on his journey, but he didn't let those failures stop him in his tracks. He actively faced his circumstances, adapted positively, and found solutions. He literally viewed every single setback as a learning opportunity. So the absolutely crucial point here is how we respond to that adversity. Research points out three main ways people approach tough conditions. Some respond with anger, some become completely overwhelmed and just shut down, and others feel the emotion but appropriately handle it. As you can guess, only that third approach promotes true resilience. Those first two, they often lead people straight into a victim mentality where they just blame others and reject any healthy coping methods. Resilient people actively cope, they bounce back, and they find constructive ways forward. Let's transition to Section 3, grit, the long game. Now, while resilience handles the immediate fire drill, grit is what sustains you long after the smoke is cleared. It's super easy to mix these two up, but the distinction is really important. Resilience is essentially a process. It's an adaptive response to a challenging situation or trauma. Bouncing back, right? Grit, on the flip side, is a trait. It's about maintaining a goal-focused effort over extended periods of time. We're talking years, sometimes decades, entirely independent of any immediate crisis. You can be super resilient in an emergency, but you absolutely need grit to spend 10 years mastering a difficult craft. And the real-world impact of having that grit? It's staggering. Angela Duckworth and her team tested this across some insanely high-stress environments. They found that grit was actually a much better predictor of success than IQ when looking at things like who achieved the highest GPAs at Ivy League schools, which cadets survived the brutal training at the West Point Military Academy, and even which kids ranked highest in the incredibly intense National Spelling Bee. The grittier competitors simply outworked their less gritty peers. They just stayed in the game longer. Which brings us nicely to Section 4, the power of self-efficacy. To really grasp how a person develops grit and resilience, we have to look under the hood at their core beliefs. What is the psychological operating system running in the background on their brain? It all really boils down to something called attribution theory, which focuses on three things: locus, stability, and controllability. So, if you believe the cause of your success is internal, meaning, hey, I put in the work, your self-efficacy goes through the roof. If you believe your failures are controllable and dynamic, meaning you have the power to change the outcome next time by just trying a different strategy, you're going to bounce back. But if you attribute your failure to stable, static factors that you literally can't control, that's when you quickly start to feel helpless and stuck. And that leads us to our final part today, Section 5, fixed versus growth mindset. That idea of attribution theory we just talked about perfectly sets up Professor Carol Dweck's legendary framework. It's all about how our internal dialogue maps out our reality. People with a fixed mindset, they believe that intelligence and talent are entirely static. Their inner voice says, I'm either naturally good at this or I'm just not. But folks with a growth mindset, they believe intelligence is completely malleable. They believe they can learn anything they set their minds to. And when they fail, they don't freak out. They just learn from it. They believe effort and attitude determine the whole shebang. The sources are really clear on this. A fixed mindset is the ultimate demotivator. Think about it. If you believe talent alone dictates your success, you're going to be terrified of trying hard because failing would secretly prove you just aren't smart enough. You won't even ask for help because every struggle feels like a permanent judgment on your worth. But a growth mindset, it completely flips the script. It entirely removes that fear, replacing it with this intense drive to just persevere and get better. This quote from Carol Dweck really ties our whole explainer together today. Failure doesn't define you. It's a problem to be faced, dealt with, and learned from. This is exactly what we saw with Shashank's story earlier. When his patience, self-confidence, and hard work finally paid off, and he crushed it in his field, guess what happened? Those exact same villagers who used to mock his dreams started using him as a role model. He proved that dreams belong to those who don't stop when things get tough, but who learn from their failures and keep marching forward. That right there is resilience, grit, and the growth mindset acting in perfect harmony. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought as we wrap up. Take a good, hard look at how you're approaching your own long-term goals right now. Are you just relying on your natural talent to carry you across the finish line? Or are you actively doing the messy, difficult work to grow your grit? Because the science is abundantly clear. The highest achievers among us aren't always the ones who started out with the most natural ability, but they are absolutely the ones who flat out refuse to quit. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep building that mental toolkit.